Good morning. Welcome to the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners. Issues and updates on April 11, 2023. Administrator Gary Schmidt, you are up.
Thank you, Chair Smith. Chair, would you please convene as the Extension and 4-H Service District?
I will recess as the Board of County Commissioners and convene as the Extension and 4-H Service District.
You are now meeting as the Extension and 4-H Service District. This is an advisory board and commission appointment. Tony, go ahead, please.
Clackamas County Extension and 4-H Service District Budget Committee, staffed by OSU Extension Clackamas, currently has 3 positions to renew for second term due to first term expirations. Through a recruitment process, 4 applications were received. 3 are recommended for appointment. Recommendations are Cheryl Keithan, Don Wiley, Edward Winkler.
I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve the list as read.
Second.
Commissioner Shull has moved to approve to the Clackamas County Extension and 4-H Service District Cheryl Keithan, Don Wiley, and Edward Winkler. Commissioner Schrader has seconded the motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Tony, please take the poll.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Commissioner Shull.
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Gary, what's next?
Thank you. Chair, would you now please reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners?
I will recess as the Extension and 4-H District Board and reconvene as a Board of County Commissioners.
You are meeting now as the Board of County Commissioners for the rest of the agenda. There is no legislative update today, although Chris did send you an email update yesterday about what's happening in Salem. Next is consent agenda review. We'll start with Health, Housing, and Human Services. Item 1, approval of a personal services contract with the Mental Health Association of Oregon for adult peer-delivered services. Contract value is $203,223.66 for 22 months. Funding is through the Oregon Health Authority. No county general funds are involved. Rod Cook, Director of Health, Housing, and Human Services. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. If approved, this would support a peer support specialist, and that support specialist will provide peer-delivered services using a choice model, which is intended to improve facility-based mental health treatment and care coordination, and to make care coordination least restrictive in the least restrictive environment. This reduces the use of long-term institutional care through this program when this program is instituted.
Questions? Commissioner Shull?
Mr. Cook, in view of the budget we're working on now, this is the new FTE, correct?
Yes.
Is it absolutely necessary to be bringing on a new FTE at this time?
The use of the word absolute, I don't think anything is ever absolutely, but it certainly is something that is important to the program. We have the funding for it, and a lot of times when we get state funding, we've applied for that funding with certain elements involved, and this would be one of those pieces where we do that. So I say the need for it is yes, and not to have it would mean not saving money, but it would be less services going to that population.
And one other question now, again, this comes from the State Mental Health and Addiction Association?
Yeah, Oregon Health Authority, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, it seems to be consistent with our goal to try to get as much mental health services out there as possible. It's not a general fund burden, so consistent with, I think, what I've heard from my colleagues at this dais say that we put a high importance on, so I'm supportive of it.
Commissioner West?
I echo Commissioner Savas. This is, I think, good use of dollars. It's not general fund dollars. I do believe in the peer, adult peer delivered services model. I think that's helpful when trying to treat and help people through mental illness. I support this.
As I do, and thank you for bringing it forward. Commissioner Shull, are you
Yeah,
finished?
that's fine.
Okay.
I understand it now.
I see no objections. Thank you.
Item 2, approval of an amendment increasing funding of an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Health Authority to finance community mental health, addiction treatment, recovery and prevention, and problem gambling services. The amendment value is $3,000 for 6 months. The total agreement value is increased to $15,401,689.98 for 1.5 years. Funding through the Oregon Health Authority. No county general funds are involved.
Yeah, we often talk about money coming to us from the state restricted, so this is restricted funding for the sole purpose of, excuse me, additional funding allocated for DUIs. This is for vets who have a DUI. They've been found guilty in a court of law, and so this person or these funds would provide a case manager for that person to work through that system, get them any resources they might need, and get them back to a healthy living. I'll put it that way.
You say veterans who have been convicted. Do we have a veterans court in Clackamas County?
I should know this, but I don't know
Well,
that.
the legislature passed it, and there was some talk around, gee, we don't have courtroom space to do it, so I was just curious, but you don't have to answer that now.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions on this? See, no. Martha?
I don't think we do have a veterans court, but there might be an opportunity to start one because we have a different DA now that might be more open to it. So-
Well, maybe when we get in our new courthouse, we can do it. We're going to get more judges with new space, so,
Yeah, that's true.
and I think it only takes maybe like, one session a month. It's not like they convene all the time to do this, yeah.
And they do bring special issues to the table, so PTSD and brain injury and all those things involved with being a vet. So that's a great concept. I mean, something we should look into.
All right. See, no objections on this?
Thank you. And no, we do not currently have Veterans Court at Clackamas County.
Thank you, whoever said that.
All right, next, Transportation and Development. Item 1, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the State of Oregon Department of Corrections for work crew labor. Total value is $25,000 for 4.67 years. Funding is through the county park user fees and other park revenue sources. No county general funds are involved. Dan Johnson, Director of Transportation and Development. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Gary. Chair Smith, Commissioners, County Parks has intermittent need for work crew laborers at various points in time. This is a very small contract, as you can see, in a very cost-efficient way to provide some of the services that we need for our parks programs. It's $25,000 over about 4.67 years. Basically, these crews will be supervised by Oregon Department of Corrections staff when they are on site and doing certain tasks. Basically, these tasks are general labor tasks that we need at some county parks, then free up park staff time, our current employees' staff time to do other projects that may be more technical in nature. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions, comments? See, no objections?
Item 2, approval of an on-call contract with DKS Associates for traffic engineering services. Total contract value is $150,000 for 2.25 years. Funding is through the county road fund. No county general funds are involved.
Thank you. This is one of two, the next item as well. And basically, these are consultant contracts with traffic consultants that have certain expertise that we don't have in-house. And they're on-call contracts. If and when we need them, we activate them. As you can see, they're for $150,000 for 2.25 years. Essentially, these are, if we have, again, skills that are above and beyond our internal skills, we activate these contracts. Or secondly, they are able to react more quickly if an urgent issue were to come to bear. We can activate those contracts immediately. We develop scopes of work with any on-call contract. So it's not just a wide open contract. We have a defined scope that we call out for those services at any given task, basically a task order that we develop. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions, comments? See, no objections?
Item 3, approval of an on-call contract with Kittleson and Associates for traffic engineering services. Total contract value is $150,000 for 2.25 years. Funding is through the county road fund. No county general funds are involved.
So basically ditto to the last discussion, but why do you hire two firms? We hire different firms for different skills, and so I want to make sure we're clear about that. One firm has a certain set of skills, another firm has another set of skills. That's the primary reason we have two contracts coming before you today.
Questions or comments? See, no objections, thank you.
Thank you. All of these items will be on this Thursday's business meeting consent agenda for your final approval, Commissioners. Next, surplus property recommendation. Dan, come on back. Dan Johnson, Transportation and Development.
You thought you were going to escape, didn't you?
That was quick.
Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you so much. Chair Smith, Commissioners, this is something new to some of you. Basically, you are all aware of the fact that we have a property disposition program within DTD. And basically, the purpose of that disposition program is to monitor, manage, and get those properties that have come to our into our ownership back on the tax rolls that have come through the foreclosure process. Okay, so essentially, as it says in the staff report, this foreclosure process is a 6-year process. Taxes are delinquent. Those properties come back to the county for failure to pay taxes. We then monitor, assess, and value those properties, and then we collaboratively work to get those properties back on the tax rolls by selling them back out to the market, okay? So you have a packet within your packet, there are 13 properties identified, and essentially we are just looking to update the board on this list. If there's something that catches your eye or something you have a concern with, we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have, but essentially with your authorization and blessing today, it allows our folks, our internal staff to start working to get that auction scheduled. We coordinate with CCSO, Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, for that auction, and we get that scheduled once you've vetted and approved the list. So with that, happy to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioner West.
So because of delinquent taxes, do we own these properties now? Is that my
They
understanding?
come into county ownership, correct.
Okay.
And then
county
when
ownership.
we sell those properties, and then those revenues aren't solely the county's revenues that come back. We disseminate those revenues back out amongst the taxing districts.
Okay.
Yep.
So we have to share the revenue with the taxing districts that also funded by property taxes.
Correct.
Right? It's not all ours.
Correct.
Okay. Is there ever, and I'm just thinking out loud, is there ever an instance where we would find this piece of land valuable and useful for county purposes, and so we would like to hold on to it?
That is a great
And I
question.
can't see, I don't have like a red, this is the property here, Commissioner West. So I'm just looking at pictures, so I don't know exactly like what is the specific, is it that whole picture? I mean, it looks like there's probably a lot within those
Yeah.
pictures, right?
Yeah, they have, if you look at the color version, they have red.
I don't have a
around.
color version with me.
Yeah.
Online,
Yeah.
it's outlined.
Yep.
Oh, okay, I see that. Okay, I just looked at the black and white.
Sorry
Okay,
about
no, that's
So-
okay.
And that's a great question, and I forgot to hit on that note in the staff report, but fundamentally, before we bring any of these properties forward to auction, our staff works to collaborate and inform not only internal county agencies or entities, but also external entities, should they have interest in some of those. You've seen a couple of those acted upon with different cities, where those cities have said, yes, we have an interest on these properties because they may be doing, I think one was around like landslide mitigation they were adjacent to a
Oregon City.
roadway. Yeah, I think it was Oregon City. And so we vet these properties through that process to ensure there's no public good or benefit that we may be foregoing by selling it. And so this list has been vetted with all those entities.
I guess I asked that question, I'll pose this to the board, is because we are trying to start a search in properties and lands where we might want to put up some type of recovery center for people that are some type of additional housing and get creative with some ideas that we're talking about. So I just don't know, I don't want to see us pass up an opportunity on a little choice piece of land that might be a perfect fit that fell into our lap. I guess is why, that's what's, making my thinking kind of go in that direction.
So thank you for the question. But so the list has been vetted with groups, number one. Number two, though, the majority of these properties are rural,
Okay.
which probably wouldn't allow for that ability. And the ones that are more urban are pretty small sizes, as I can see, and are residentially zoned as well. And so that might have some challenges in regards to citing certain facility locations, especially if I don't know exactly the type of facility you're discussing or have a concept around.
Yeah.
But if it's an institutional facility, that might be a little more challenging in some of those areas.
Okay.
A few weeks back, the city of Milwaukee wanted to buy some of our more stranded properties out there. I don't remember if those were foreclosures or not.
They were.
That's what okay.
Yeah, they were vetted as a part of that government review.
And
Yep.
I'm glad that the city of Milwaukee has uses for those. And, but I looked through these
Oh, it's pretty small.
on my computer. Yeah, and most of these parcels are pretty small.
Yeah.
There is, a 3-acre parcel, but it's clear out on Wildcat Mountain Road. That's not going to be really doable, but it's a
And
good
there are some with
question.
houses on them that are already residential in nature, and so, I mean, they all take a different form, so.
Yeah. Any further questions for Dan on this? Gary, do we entertain a motion?
See, yes, please.
I'll entertain a motion.
I move that the board approve the proposed property list as dedicated surplus to be offered for sale at a future auction or private sale.
I'll second.
Commissioner Scholl has moved that we approve the proposed property list as dedicated surplus property to be offered for sale at a future auction or a private sale. It's been seconded by Commissioner West. It says private sale. So if somebody comes to us and they want to pay what the value, appraised value on this, can they buy it here? Or
No,
do
they
they
go-
have to wait for the auction?
They're waiting for the auction. They
But
go
it
through that
says
auction.
or private sale. I guess I'm having trouble with that verbiage, but whatever.
We would bring,
Kathleen Rassiter's going to come up and.
perfect.
and
That's
bail you
fabulous,
out.
Kathleen. Thank you so much. You need like a screen right here so I can see you guys in the back like crazy.
Like mine, right?
Yeah,
Please introduce
or
yourself.
this way.
So, I know,
Kathleen Rassiter from County Council.
Kathleen Raster from County Council, thank you, Chair. By statute, we have to first sell foreclosed property at the auction, at a public sale.
Okay.
After that, if the property for some reason does not sell at auction, we can offer it for private sale. But so to have to prevent them from coming back to
Got
you,
it.
I think they're asking you for permission for both.
Okay, so if it doesn't sell, we could do it privately. Okay, thank you. That's a good point of clarification. Any further discussion on this matter? Seeing none, Tony, please take the poll.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Gary, what's next?
Next, review of your business meeting agenda for this Thursday, April 13th, 2023. It is an evening business meeting starting at 6 p.m. You'll have a public hearing on reviewing the 2022 Community Development Programs and Proposed Action Plan. This is a housing and urban development requirement for our housing folks. You'll have a Water Environment Services public hearing, which is a first reading of an ordinance adopting rules and regulations for water environment services. You've already had 2 policy sessions on those proposed rules. And you'll have all the consent agenda items you reviewed at today's meeting. If you have any questions on any of these items, please let me know, and staff will answer them for you prior to Thursday's meeting. Next, we're plowing through this agenda very quickly. Next, Commissioner Savas wanted to discuss the Blue Ribbon Commission structure.
Yes, Chair and colleagues, I wanted to just take us back to our retreat we had a couple months ago when I first broached the idea, and just remind ourselves, what we were talking about then. And it's not clear to me, maybe it seems to be that the way this is headed is somewhere different. So I just wanted to just get an idea, the flavor and the direction the board's taking, because it's somewhat of a shift. So I will back up and say that in our history of taking, committees, special committees to do the work, we have done a so-so job of following through with those recommendations and so on. So, we have, a history in the housing world, in the homeless services world, we have a history of doing that. And what I thought, based on that, was there were perhaps some ideas of some different models and ways of approaching the problems outside of Oregon, that are bringing outside people from, again, outside the state. I think that was the sense of the discussion. So when I had broached the idea about this, that was my intention. And of course, everything else that was in play at the time would be continued. There was no anticipation that we would suddenly stop doing something we're doing, but more to build on our assets or our programs and so forth. So it seems to me now that I've heard a little bit from our staff trying to set up recommendations for that, I'm hearing more local stuff. So I just don't know if that really, to me, that seems like a change of the original content. Whatever the board does is whatever the board does. But if I'm just concerned that it might actually jeopardize our initial intention of making something, taking outside ideas, and then perhaps, not doing that any longer. So if that's a pursuit or purpose, great. But I'm just kind of concerned about bringing in local stuff. We already did that. We already know, right? We already know what those local recommendations are. But again, if we want to be unbiased and listen to outside sources, I thought that was the purpose. I'll stop there. That's all I wanted to do. If there's a change or a shift differently.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Savas. I don't think there has been a change or a shift. And that's why we have a planning meeting scheduled for April 26th at 1 p.m. to discuss exactly what we're going to do with that. What I think happened is our PAs went and interviewed all of us, and maybe we all had a different idea. Remember, I recommended 2 different types of committees to be involved. And at that time, on the 26th, as we flesh these ideas out with staff, I think we might have a more definite idea of what we want to do with these. Now, I would agree that we do need sources and resources and information outside the state of Oregon to come in and advise us on some of the procedures that we want to do. Whether it's exclusive to that, I don't know. I think we can determine that. I'm not saying to do that. I'm not opposed to that. I have not put my stamp in, I just haven't thrown the gauntlet down saying this is what we're going to do, because I think it's up to the board as we move forward with this. We can certainly be prepared at this planning session on the 26th for commissioners to bring either names or positions of what they think to this. I would like to see the board do just a little bit of pre-work on that. I think that would be very valuable for us. It would save time. And if you want to do that, or any other commissioner wants to do that, I think it would be very helpful. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah. So that'd be great, because if the board takes the approach that we want people outside of Oregon, then my colleagues will maybe look for people or names or programs or examples to bring those into the conversation. If they're only focused on local, they'll be ill-prepared for that. So thank you for that. That clarifies it.
Okay.
And I did want to say, now that you shared the date of the 26th of April, Gary, I'm hoping that our request for understanding the population, right, I won't say the continuum, but the cohort of homeless, so we have a better idea what those percentages are. If we're going to solve problems and we're going to be talking about this, I think we need to know all the different types of people and how or why they're, in the situation or are. So I think that makes our work better and our understanding better when it comes to proffering solutions. That's all I have, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, just a couple things I've been doing in relationship to this is that I did ask Christina to get me the 2018, work that was done with suggestions. That was more of a community engagement piece. So there's that, and I also, because of the National Association of Counties, I have them. Michael, who's my staff person for the CEWD group, working on names and possibilities, and Christina's starting to funnel that information. The other thing that I'll do is make sure I either get you the links, or I may have hard copies of case studies across the United States that could help inform things, because those are available to us. So for that meeting, I will at least make sure those materials, I'll talk to her today and make sure those materials are available to you folks.
Good. I think that's excellent. I think it's wonderful that any commissioner wants to bring.
Yep.
Did you have your light on and you don't?
I turned it off.
Okay.
I turned mine off, too.
Oh, okay. Any further discussion on this? Gary, are we okay on this discussion?
Yeah, so to clarify, we actually have a policy session scheduled next week for the Blue Ribbon Committee discussion, and to continue that discussion at your board planning meeting on the 26th. So we have 2 sessions for you upcoming. And yes, at your last discussion, you asked your individual policy advisor to talk to you individually to get your ideas. And Commissioner Savas is true. Staff has heard different things from each of you individually, but we're going to bring it all forward to you next week for you to clarify, which you kind of just did, but to further refine what you like on this committee.
So is our goal for the policy session next week to narrow down what we want to do with the blue ribbon?
Correct,
And
yes.
who will be leading that policy session?
It will be someone from our county administration office.
Okay, so commissioners, with that in mind, we'll put our think tanks on here, our think heads on, and we can then we can continue discussion at our policy sessions. Okay, thank you, Gary.
Thank you. All right,
Oh,
next.
Paul, excuse me, your light is on.
So, yeah, just one other thing, now that Gary just informed me that it's the 26th and also earlier, so just want to just amp up my request to get that from H3S or whoever's working on that matrix of the population types in advance of the meeting.
Yes, that was emailed to you all last week, Commissioners, so tell me if that was not.
Well, that
what
was
you were looking for.
partial. My understanding was that was just the initial work, and that the completed work, so maybe I'm misunderstanding, but that was that they gave us something in advance of the chamber event, the state of the county. That was some advanced numbers, but that was not the complete work completed.
I'll have to follow up because I thought it was. The point in time count work is not done yet, and that will be the final analysis numbers, but that will not be done until June or August. But I'll confirm.
Okay, let's do that. Thank you.
And when you confirm, could you just send us out another email?
Yes.
Because we get a lot of emails, and sometimes we're not sure what email is for what
Will do.
purpose. Thank
Will
you,
do.
Gary. Any other comments or questions at this time on the Blue Ribbon Committee? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. The final item today is Commissioner Communications.
Oh, who wants to go first? I have a lot to talk about, too, some good stuff. Commissioner?
Yes, let me just pass on. Yesterday afternoon, we had the Association of Oregon Counties Legislative Committee meeting. We looked over the bills that each of the steering committees recommended. If you want a copy of it, let me know. I'll get a copy to you. And then following that, we had the Association of Oregon Counties Board of Directors meeting where we went over the treasurer's report. If you need a copy of that, let me know. I'll get it to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Scholl. Commissioner West?
Yeah, I hope everybody had a fantastic Easter. It was a good time to turn off the county phone, and we got to do a little home improvement project on Jay's bathroom. Dealing with a teenage boy's bathroom is not the funnest thing to do over Easter weekend, but we got that project completed. Excuse me, and I had a great time to have dinner and play games and have good family time. I hope everybody got a chance to celebrate and kind of to do that. Those are important things. I got a chance to spend some time and tour a Safe Place Family Justice Center. I want to give that organization with our sheriff's department a huge shout out. That is tough work. They deal with a lot of the sex trafficking, sex crimes, domestic violence. I'm probably missing some of the other important things they deal with, but they create this like really, and we do it so much better than most counties. And I think it's important to point out our successes when we do them. This is an important success, and we create this web where somebody that's in that situation can get the support they need to navigate through that difficult situation. If the legal aspects, through the justice system, through just the human issues and needs with childcare and the basic needs that we all deal with. I was just very impressed by the work they do and how robust that is. I hope one day that we can continue to invest in that program. I thought it was fantastic, and it really does important good work. I got to go to Tukwila Springs last night and got a tour of that facility. It is beautiful. I believe last June is when it was opened. It was wonderfully, beautifully renovated. Got to hang out with some of the residents there. I met Luna the cat, who is like the resident cat, and she runs the place for sure. And Ryan, who is doing the programming there, his story is pretty impressive. And we got to serve meals and do some bacon cheddar potato soup or some hamburger soup, salads, hang out. And special thanks to the Friends of the Gladstone Nature Park, who helped put on that. Did I get that right? We got to hang out with them. Great people. Really impressed by what their involvement in their community. Special thanks to Councilor Mindy Garland, former Mayor Tammy Stemple, and the rest of the crew there. It was a blast and had a good time doing that. Still some work to do, some maybe a few things to work out at that facility, but overall I think we can look back and see how it has improved and is a success. And so that just a few things that I was able to do that I've had a pleasure engaging in. And once again, I hope everybody had a wonderful holiday weekend.
Thank you. Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, I had a great time on Friday. I went to your digs chair out to Malala, where I visited the new affordable housing complexes that are being put up there. It was really phenomenal. I was there with the mayor and city councilors. We got a whole tour of these units. They're absolutely going to be beautiful. It's going to be a real asset to have affordable housing, that missing middle, and then, be 60% below and 30% below. I do have renderings that I left in my car.
Bring them
So I'll
in.
drop them in so you can take a look at them. But they're also, the same group is also doing building in Estacada as well. So our rural communities are really stepping up to the plate to also have an opportunity to do more housing. I continue in that vein to look at some of the USDA opportunities. And I'm hopeful I can talk to some of our housing folks to look at that as well. There's a lot of money out there from the USDA for communities like Malala and Estacada for infrastructure. I'm thinking sewer and also rural housing. So that was it was really fun to go out there, and it rained like crazy, but hey, we got through it. I had a great Easter. I had a number of folks over for my big Easter ham. I have pictures. Okay, I'll show you. And this morning, I also dropped off 2 homemade frozen lasagnas. I still have to get one here to my friend Fumi, who is part of the Catholic worker movement, because they have people there, they have a hospitality piece, and they feed people. So that was why I was on time today, folks. I actually had to meet Fumi, so don't get used to it, okay? That may not happen again, but that was great. And also, I had a recent conversation with our workforce folks. This is Bridget Daisy on childcare and what's been happening in Salem. And they just sent me today, Christina told me, a bunch of follow-up pieces to see where a lot of what's going on in Salem. In particular, I've been tracking a bill that would increase capacity for building facilities, because one of the things I found out from my KinderCare visits is that daycare facilities have to be designed for little people. So you have to have little small toilets and little small sinks, and easy access to outside, a play yard, so on and so forth. So one of the things we need is not just only the capacity for getting kids, but also the facilities, and then looking at education potential for people who want to go into early childhood development for the workforce, and what that could potentially lead to for them professionalizing that workforce, we hope. But also that workforce oftentimes has a career pathway. People will start out there and either stay there, or they will start to go into things like teaching and nursing as well. So it's kind of a nice capacity to have all 3 stay in early childcare, but then you can move on to something else. So anyway, that was my week. It was great.
Wonderful. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I too had an opportunity to connect with family on the Easter holiday. I'm Greek Orthodox. The Easter is on a different calendar for Greek Orthodox, so it's a lunar calendar. So this is the one rare year where it's the same Sunday.
Really?
It's not, people don't know that, but Greek Easter is not always the same Sunday as Easter, so it's nice to have it on the same holiday, right? But what I wanted to chat about was today I went to the AOC transportation meeting. As you know, coming out of COVID, before COVID we were meeting live, and before HB 2017 I was quite involved with the transportation committee, and since that time I've been really busy. So I actually made my first appearance live for the first time yesterday morning in Salem, which is nice. I'm really looking forward to, as I look at all the meetings that are starting to go live, they all have a virtual element to them. I think people that are attending virtually are missing out on the relationship opportunities. I got there early and I stayed a little bit later, but a great way to network and to connect with some of our colleagues around the state. And the chair asked me to talk about the bridge, and I realized that her request might actually actually shed some light to me, actually, that, whoops, maybe the board's never heard the presentation. That was my
Right.
third or fourth presentation on the Columbia River Bridge. And I'm not sure my colleagues have ever seen it.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it. So thank you for bringing that to my attention. So the Columbia River Bridge project, Greg Johnson is the project manager. He made a half an hour or so pitch at the AOC Transportation Committee yesterday morning, talking about the cost. I've seen the presentation again before, and so the range currently right now is between 5-6 million up to 5 to 6 billion up to 7.5 billion, depending on circumstances and final cost. And as for those of you who've been watching the news, Washington State is going to be part of that expenditure. They're going to match. They put a $1 billion match, and it's up to the state legislature to see if we're going to do that. I don't believe Washington State leveraged or borrowed to get the $1 billion match, but I see that perhaps we're struggling here in Oregon to meet the match. And as we go forward, we got to realize that the cost of that, one way or another, however it's funded, whether it's tolling or gas tax or all of the above, I don't know how they're going to get there, but that'll create a big vacuum. All those dollars will be funneled that way, and I'm afraid that other large projects will have to take a back seat for a long time. That's my concern. It's been a regional concern for a long time. But again, I'm still focused on the Sunrise Corridor and hoping that somehow there's a carve-out for that. The other thing we learned a little bit, there's been more talk about it now at the state legislature, that they're perhaps going to kick the can, so to speak, to 2025 for a transportation package again. I'm concerned about that because it doesn't really provide any clarity for us when it comes to long-term funding. There was a proposal discussed about what was called ORGO, vehicle miles traveled, now calling it a road user fee. Discussion and a presentation about that, about a current bill. Commissioner Doran, I forgot which county he was from, but Commissioner Doran spoke to that virtually, and he shared some concerns about getting answers to questions that we are sharing on the tolling side of the discussion. So a very similar, again, aggravation, I think I heard from him. It just sounds like ODOT's got a lot of things going on, and I don't know if they're as staff stretched as we are, but it seems like they have way more things on their plate than I even realized. That said, I did make a request for some discussion at the next month's April meeting for a greater discussion on tolling, to let them know what's going on. I don't think they really know the full picture, so they are going to accommodate my request unless there's something, well, not necessarily unless, but also any opportunity, if there's any legislation that we want to get behind or not, that they, did offer up potentially, if needed, their special ops folks committee to see if the AOC wants to get behind or against or take a position on any particular legislative bill. So that's my transportation update from AOC, and I'm going to try to do my best now that they're meeting live on Mondays versus Fridays. It's going to be better for me, so I'll do my best to keep in tune there, and that's what I have for today.
Thank you, Commissioner Savas. I asked staff to get the slide deck of the presentation on the Columbia River Bridge. I think we all need to take a look at it, what they're proposing on that. I remember last time that this was being presented, I think the cost, the facilitator, who's been hired by both Washington State and Oregon State to do this project, said it was like $3 billion. Now he thinks $6 billion. The budget is between anywhere from $5.5 billion to $7 billion. He thinks $6 billion, providing everything goes correctly and there's no opposition. I kind of thought maybe, well, if he thinks there's, I don't know what the opposition is going to be, but I remember last time, Paul, and I was not clear on their presentation. One of the reasons it had trouble last time, because they wanted to have the federal funding to help build it. In order to have the federal funding, we had to have light rail. In order to have light rail over the bridge, it needs to be fairly flat in design, which means it did not allow for river traffic to go under it. Now, did they say that they're going to have a raise on the bridge? Did I hear that correct?
So fascinating, there's so much there, and actually, Mr. Johnson did not cover everything in his presentation that's going on. So at 6 o'clock on KGW, at times, they're covering the Columbia River Bridge now. So it's a great, kind of like a 60 Minutes kind of a piece.
Okay.
So they've been doing a pretty good job, and you can watch the previous episodes. They're online, available on their website. So there's a couple presentations, but I think the idea that they have now is that they'll have a parallel bridge alongside for the light rail as opposed to being on the bridge itself.
I see.
So it'll be, I think, built into the whole construction process, but I think perhaps detached, but adjacent to.
With
That's
the
how
fo-
I perceived it, but I
okay.
haven't seen the drawings of that. I'm sure they're out there.
Yeah.
I just haven't heard that as far as being detached, because it was gonna run down the middle of it
Yeah.
at one point.
Right. I hope they address the river traffic. It's very important to commerce for both states. Thank you on that. I attended that. It was very informative, very interesting listening to the comments on that, and I just took a lot of notes, but we'll try to get that slide deck so you folks can take a look at it. I have a couple important presentations that I'm going to be bringing to the board based on the community, and we've all had those. I met with the Molalla area seniors, the Molalla Adult Community Center. They've been wanting to build a new center. And as you know, a center was built in the 80s with community block grant funds that actually the city of Molalla owned. Well, the city of Molalla, through COVID, decided to take over the center because, well, with COVID, it was very difficult. And so the Molalla Area Senior Group, which is the Molalla Adult Group, who is a 501c3, moved to the church. And they have space in the church. However, they're running out of space, and they want to own their own because they do not want to be displaced like they were in the 80s, having another government agency like the city owning what they took care of for 40 or 50 years and being kicked out. So they're asking to build a new center. They have already purchased the land, 2.3 acres. They're making payments on it, and they are raising money, like they really are raising a lot of money out there. And once they bought the land, it's like more came in. Oh, you're serious? Okay, we'll help you with that. This organization, they claim to be the most active entity in the state, and this qualifies under adults and seniors and people with disabilities type of organization. They have 300 active members, 100 meals a day, Meals on Wheels that are delivered. They're open 4 days a week for lunch, and they serve about 2,000 meals a month. They also provide other services, medical services. They'll have doctors, they'll have therapists and counselors come in to also help with that. They have asked the county for some help on this. They want to apply for a community block grant. I have not had time to meet with Rod on that. You're on my calendar to discuss this if it's possible. Of course, I made no promises, but I told them that I would ask, and they are not in a hurry, so the next allocations we might want to look at. I told them they needed to really decide on a plan and how much it was going to cost them to go forward on that. And so they're really in the beginning stages of this, but they're very determined to go forward on that. I wanted to bring that forward to you. Molalla is one of the fastest growing cities in the state of Oregon, and their social services are in crisis out there. And they do a lot, and they've been asked a lot. They partner, believe it or not, with 17 different churches in the area to provide food and clothing, not shelter, but they just want to be able to operate on their own with autonomy and have their own place. Yesterday, I visited the Adult and Teen Challenge Pacific Northwest, brand-new location on McLaughlin Avenue. They purchased the old credit union building, the brick building. They have moved they've moved their headquarters from Portland to this location. And this is a really fantastic organization. They are quite active in the treatment of people with addictions and mental health. You two are probably aware of them. They right now have a men's treatment center in the city of Estacada, just outside. They house 40 beds. It's a residential treatment center. They want to start a residential treatment center for women in Clackamas County, and they are able to staff it. their income sources through donations. They get a lot of donations from different agencies and nonprofits. They provide the Super Thrift. It's a red logo of thrift stores. It's called Super Thrift. They're I think, are leasing the old Goodwill store here in Oregon City that's next to Weimar. That's a big revenue source for them. And then their other revenue sources is the counseling and therapy services that are reimbursed through the Oregon Health Plan and the federal government. And they're getting a big federal government grant to train more people in this area. They can deliver the services for residential treatment. They came to me and said, is there any money to help us buy a location? They identified a location, and by the time I left the building yesterday, it had already sold. So things come on the market, and they were surprised because it had been on the market for a very long time. The building they're in now, the old credit union on McLaughlin Avenue, had been on the market for a very long time, and they're remodeling it, and boy, I tell you, they have made a lot of progress in a very short time. I have some information for you folks, if you want it. It talks about what they do, statistics, their executive leadership. They are in 5 states in the Northwest: Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and Alaska. And they have been in this business since 1958. And it is a faith-based organization, and they have a lot of successes, and they're willing to do this work for us. So here's this. If you don't want the book, just hand it back. So we're going to be talking with our folks here, bring it back to the board, see what we want to do, because we've been talking about doing something like this, and this is a start. I think as we move forward on taking care of this homeless issue and addiction and mental health, that we would be well-positioned to use the nonprofits in the area and regionally to help deliver the services, and then we offer the funding where the funding is available. And we have several funding pots available to us, and we're looking at those. We're trying to decide what to do. There's also some noise out there of the cities might want to partner with us on some of this, which I think is really cool. So that's just two opportunities here that have come to me in the last 3 days, and I'm sure as we go forward on this, we'll be asked, to do other things. And I bring these opportunities to us because I have already been able to identify a funding source. It's not that we don't have the funds available. So we're working on that going forward. Thank you, Commissioners, for a very enlightening day. Seeing no further business before this commission, we are adjourned.